The golden age of anime. Not only when anime started becoming a household term worldwide, but when gem after gem started to be produced. From shonen like Fist of the North Star to psychological and mature shows like Neon Genesis Evangelion, to stylish cult classics like Cowboy Bebop. No one can forget the Omae wa mo Shinderu, the sea space cowboy, and Shinji doing dastardly deeds around his comatose friend. Though I'm sure we would all actually love to forget the last one. When was the Golden Age? How did it come to fruition? Why was it golden? Well, many of the achievements of the so-called Golden Age involve significant breakthroughs of anime into the Western market, more specifically, America. But this isn't because of some American superiority complex of mine. It's simply that, at the time, America was the gateway, and was spearheading much of modern entertainment, as it still does. But it meant that spreading anime to America meant spreading anime to the world. And while I could, of course, discuss the roots of anime and its first steps in America through 1963's Astro Boy or 1968's Speed Racer, in reality it's difficult to even call this era anime, let alone a golden age. Because of American redubs and heavy censorship from television networks, these shows were adapted completely to a non-Japanese audience. Most American audiences at the time didn't even realize that what they were watching was originally Japanese. Plus, it wasn't really a hit with networks. Astro Boy could only air 106 out of 124 episodes they planned, and the show was taken off the airways after just 1 year. It's safe to say that the anime scene had yet to flourish. And so we fast forward to the 80s, the beginning of an era that was marked with one major landmark for us otaku, and what kick-started the Golden Age. VHS. Alongside an interest in anime in general, which had already made waves in Japan, many American companies rose to the occasion of adapting anime for Western markets through VHS, because all they had to do was redub it, and that's about it. It was cheap and pretty damn easy. We saw a massive proliferation of domestic licensors producing anime at this time. Animego and Streamline in 1988, Central Park Media in 1990, and Manga Entertainment in 1991, which didn't actually make manga despite the rather misleading name. And with these companies, some of the most famous titles to this day were brought to Western audiences. Captain Tsubasa, which established the sports anime formula in the early 80s and set the standard for what has now evolved into basketball with superpowers, or devolved into whatever Keijo is, a series that I'm sure makes our ancestors proud of how far we've come as a species. Streamline adapted Akira into VHS, a movie which was surprisingly a huge financial disappointment back in Japan, despite having a huge film budget and state-of-the-art animation at the time. Hell, it's still beautiful to this day. It's better than Seven Deadly Sins. Akira was one of the most extreme cases of international attention popularizing anime, skyrocketing it to the famous heights it now rests upon everywhere in supreme collabs and art books. Studio Ghibli's first film, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, dropped in '84. Central Park Media released Grave of the Fireflies, a tearjerker and historical drama. Manga Entertainment adapted Fist of the North Star and Ghost in the Shell. All of the biggest titles we know to this day were making their debut through VHS. However, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine quite yet. After all, when America colonizes things, it's usually not all that great, and that feeling was starting to set in. Companies like Streamline only released dubbed versions with no extra subtitles at all, and alongside their rather interpretive voiceovers, much of the original value was actually lost in translation. Though some companies went for more literal translations, certain jokes or references to famous Japanese historical figures simply didn't work in English. And a few companies even went so far as to make dub titles to avoid this, where the subtitles aren't of the original Japanese script even, but of the dubbed version. So not only were they interpretive translations, but the subtitles couldn't even serve as closed captions, because they had no captions for sound effects or background music either. it's safe to say that dub titles did not go down well in history books. In the mid-80s, as mainstream anime made huge strides, another industry knew that they had to step up to the plate. And thus, in 1984, the first ever hentai, Lolita Anime, and the released soon after Cream Lemon rose to the occasion. I don't think I ever want to see the words Lolita and Cream in the same sentence ever again, man. And yes, this is still relevant to America ruining the image of anime in their country, because big companies like Central Park Media decided that the best adult titles to adapt were ones like Urotsukudoji, the hentai that kicked off the long-lasting Western misconception that all anime was just tentacle porn. AD Vision's release of Neon Genesis Evangelion with a built-in jiggle counter, which they did in fact trademark because I guess it was just such a groundbreaking idea, was also rather detrimental to the show's rather mature themes and philosophical introspection. But I gotta give them credit, it's still pretty funny. One of the biggest companies, Manga Entertainment, also confused us ignorant Americans because, well, they didn't make manga. For people getting introduced into the medium, which may be difficult already to traverse, this was just icing on the cake, really. But pressure makes diamonds, and looking past all of these different forms of censorship or misleading marketing, at the end of the day, anime was starting to take its hold on the world through new accessibility and amazing films like Akira. And despite the economic crash in Japan in 1991, anime's grip on the world was already too strong for a mere recession to stop its impending takeover. Notably, Studio Ghibli continued to get stronger and stronger through this period, releasing big hits like Kiki's Delivery Service and their very underrated and not very well known at all film My Neighbor Totoro. Toei also released Sailor Moon in '92, kickstarting a generation obsessed with not just magical girls, but alongside the slightly older Ghost in the Shell, female characters being prominent and powerful leads in animation. Gainax's release of Neon Genesis, as I mentioned earlier, similarly established two of the most famous female anime archetypes, the tsundere and moe, tropes that still rarely change to this day. On top of this, giant robots and integration of religious symbols made waves in the anime community in fresh and new ways. And as more diverse anime started to be released, many otakus of the time knew that America's way of adapting couldn't remain, that it had to meet those high standards. And thus, we began a great wave of fan subs. Individuals or small collectives of fans started subbing anime of their own accord, which was the origins of the great sub vs dub war. I was personally raised with dubbed anime. Dragon Ball Z and Naruto on TV were my bread and butter. I didn't watch a subbed anime until I was at least like 10 years old. And so even though subs are important to mention, at the time, they were really only made for die-hard fans. Even companies caught on to this, and they did start making subtitle versions of movies. However, they made less copies for higher prices, because they knew that the demand from the smaller, subtitle-chasing otaku audiences would be willing to pay the extra money for the quality. And because, in America, dub simply sold more from a sales standpoint. And thus, during the golden age of anime, dub ruled the world. More so, what is important about fan subs is that anime was getting around. A new type of Japanese animation that was, frankly, taking over. Even more companies started hopping on the train in the early 90s, most of which you will all recognize as modern-day monoliths. Viz Media with Ranma 1/2, 4Kids with Pokemon, Bandai with Cowboy Bebop, and Funimation with Dragon Ball. Even Disney hopped on the train, striking a deal with Studio Ghibli and releasing their movies in America, starting with Kiki's Delivery Service. And of course, with more attention comes more and better anime. And the most notable, we have to mention, has to be Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. The integration of anime onto actual television, transitioning from VHS to TV, was huge, and marked the climax of the golden age of anime. First released in Japan in 1986, Dragon Ball was already huge in Japan as the first big shonen anime, or at least shonen in the way we refer to it nowadays. And despite taking an entire decade to be aired in America in '96, it likewise took American television by storm. The most popular cartoon on Cartoon Network for 6 months straight in '98, Dragon Ball Z was huge, and for good reason. Even as a kid growing up in the 2000s, Dragon Ball Z was the first anime that I ever watched, and it certainly had a huge impact on me as a kid. Maybe even a decade after it was first aired by the time I hopped on the train. And alongside Fist of the North Star, the trope of muscular dudes duking it out and saving the world soon began trailblazing a path for just about every kind of anime genre you could imagine. Pokemon exploded onto the scene in '98, expanding its reach on younger audiences into games and toys and all kinds of merchandise on a level that has really never been replicated since. Princess Mononoke, released in 1999 by the already established king of classic anime Studio Ghibli, was the most expensive anime movie made up to that point. Genres were expanding too, giving rise to the dark and psychological Serial Experiments Lain and the political epic Legend of the Galactic Heroes, which I highly recommend, of course. Anime was improving in just about every way, financially and in diversity of quality. And to wrap off the decade, in 1999, Bandai just managed to creep in with Cowboy Bebop, fighting for the spot of magnum opus of the decade in terms of cult following and long-lasting cultural effect in America, with a dub that is renowned to be just as good, if not better than the subs version, something that can't be said for many anime. It signified that America was finally getting their act together with adapting anime properly. The iconic opening and soundtrack, stylish animation, and clash of Western themes and ideas meeting Japanese animation, it all worked together perfectly. And what distinguishes this era isn't just that it gave rise to mainstream anime across the world, but the permanence of the new anime as well. Dragon Ball Z is a household name to this day, as is just about every Studio Ghibli film out there. Inspiration of shows like Fist of the North Star in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and the onset of anime-inspired cartoons like Avatar: The Last Airbender are just a handful of the numerous inspirations. The Golden Age was something to behold, and it still is. It is something that will never be forgotten among us anime watchers. And that is its legacy. Now, if you've made it this far, I didn't want to put it at the beginning of the video and detract from the main ideas, but thank you for 10,000 subscribers. It really means a lot, and I hope that we can continue to grow together and keep getting better. My next video will kick off a new series that I'm starting called Bedtime Binge, which I'll give a little spoiler of here, but look forward to it, definitely. ACC, only up. And also, thanks for watching till the end of the video. As always, this has been the Anime Culture Corner. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future in-depth show, manga, and character analyses.